Hey everybody, this is Vince Miller. Thank you so much for joining me for this devotional. Today we're in Acts chapter 13. I'm going to be reading verses 42 through 44. As they went out, remember Paul was preaching, the people begged that these things might be told to them the next Sabbath. And after the meeting of the synagogue broke up, many Jews and devout converts to Judaism followed Paul and Barnabas, who as they spoke with them urged them to continue in the grace of God. The next Sabbath, almost the whole city gathered to hear the word of the Lord. Well, how about this? People were begging Paul to preach. And why? Well, because it's the first time ever they heard the gospel of freedom by grace. And they were so pumped about it, they wanted their friends to hear about it. I mean, imagine hearing your whole life about an Old Testament law and feeling weighted down by the oral and written traditions needed for obedience to God. One that is entirely, by the way, performance-based. A law and its legal requirements that only condemn. Remember, the point of the law was to make us conscious of sin, so that's what the law did. It condemned. Paul even says this years later in his letter to the Romans. Actually, in Romans 3:20, he says something like this. He says, "For by works of the law, no human being will be justified in his sight, since through the law comes the knowledge of sin." And then one Sabbath day, you happen to be sitting in a synagogue and you hear a clarifying interpretation of the law in light of the Old Testament messianic promises that are realized in Jesus. And you hear this from a man who's very educated in the law, who has also seen Christ pre-death and post-resurrection, who is telling you the story that some did not want to be told. The story of an Old Testament law that's not abolished, but made complete in Jesus. A message of good news and freedom from the law and its hundreds of laborious demands. And guess who was excited? Well, everyone is excited, especially Gentiles, because they're pumped. They don't have to be circumcised to become a believer. And I'm kind of half joking about that, but it does prove the point, right? The Jewish law had all these rules, written and oral, that were required to regulate obedience. And Jesus Christ loosens the shackles on what Jewish legalism had made imprisoning and almost impossible. Well, totally impossible. Gentlemen, this is the gospel the world needs to know. One of freedom from sin. Not freedom to sin. Freedom from sin by faith in Jesus, followed with obedience to Him. You know, performance-based systems beat down people around us all day long. Just like this system that Paul is talking about here. Everything in this life is performance-based. Our work environment is performance-based. Sometimes our families are performance-based. And sometimes even our churches are performance-based. But Jesus' system is not. His system is one of grace, redeeming broken and sinful people because He knows we cannot live a righteous life. So He lived perfectly righteous for us. He lived that perfectly righteous life. And then He died a sinner's death to reconcile the gap between our sin and a great God. And guess what? This is the good news. You have the means to become a child of God, not by performance-based obedience, but by grace through faith in the resurrection of Jesus. You know, if you're ready to begin a relationship with God, you can literally do that right now by giving God all the good and the bad parts of your life, surrendering to Him as your Savior and Lord, and walking in obedience by His grace, literally right now. You know, fellas, if you need guidance on how to make this decision, just let me know and I'll pray with you. But do me a favor. Share this post with someone you know who needs to hear it today, someone who needs to be relieved of the pressure of performance-based obedience, and someone who needs grace. I love you guys. See you right back here again tomorrow.